So, hello everyone. So, welcome to our
Hello.
next podcast. We're here. The whole home team is here. And with us is our guest, and her name is Maisa Rahman. Did I get it right?
Yes, exactly. Good.
So, Maisa is a PhD, which I didn't know. When I invited Maisa, I had no idea. So, I invited Maisa because Maisa was special.
Oh,
Maisa was a friend of mine, or still is, a
oh,
friend of
so
mine
good.
on Facebook, and Maisa was showing things on her webpage that I don't see regularly. So I wanted to share her experiences and her passion and her vision with other colleagues that are interested in watching us. And obviously, there will be some people watching us, but there will be people in due course watching us asynchronously. So, welcome everybody. Welcome viewers. Welcome Maisa. Dr. Maisa, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And welcome home team Lala and Andrew. So, this is the first time of Maisa on a podcast. So, I will just try my best to help everybody, including Maisa, to take you through it. So, we did write in our introduction that we will talk about ELT curriculum in Indonesia, which is hardly any different from Cambodia, hardly any different from Vietnam, because all these objectives that frame our school curricula are basically aligning now together for good reason, and maybe some of you actually know the reason, which is um, what are they called? Just escaped my head. The partnerships, 21, what are they called? Those global higher order thinking skills that were invented in the beginning of the century, so that to give a foundation for education to adhere
Mhm.
to. Anyway, so I talk about project based learning, curriculum, and concepts like language, but I do not want to frighten Dr. Maisa. So I would
Okay.
like to first hear from Dr. Maisa a few things about her. And I focused our first part of our session calling it the practicalities of EFL teaching in Indonesia, and specifically in your context, Maisa. So we would like to hear something about you. If you can introduce yourself to us, if you can talk to us about your intricacies, what is happening in your professional context in general, and how do you find yourself in it, and what do you do? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ania. Hello, Mr. Lala. Mr. Lala used to be my colleague actually when I was taking magister program.
Right.
I hope Mr.
Thank you,
Lala still
Maisa.
remember me.
Yeah,
Well,
repeat
okay.
your
Thank
number.
you very much. Yes, Andrew and Ania. Ania, do you remember that we have ever met in Cirebon?
We
It
have.
was around 2000. Yes. That actually, I was still having my doctorate program. Then now, Alhamdulillah, I have finished it. And my dissertation is actually, uh, what is it? Talking about or recommend some curriculums. What is it? Repairments for our English education program. Starting with my what is it? My curiosity about how actually to empower our English teachers. Indonesian uh, put English as a foreign language, just like in Vietnam, Cambodia, or others country. Then that actually that the what is it? That's my critical point. Why English still what is it? Many English teachers still did not succeed in making their students to speak up in English. Right? That's my big questions. Then
So
big
you're questioning why don't they have enough proficiency? Is this what you're asking?
that's right. That's right. Proficiency, accuracy, and etc. And etc. And also they don't have any perhaps opportunity to practice or to speak English because it is still a foreign language here in Indonesia. But then I start with the English, the pre-service English teachers, were actually my students going to be an English teacher someday after graduating, right? Then I come with the concept of FRAIR, a pedagogical, what is pedagogy? Then I suddenly find the word which is very powerful. It's about dialogic consciousness at the time.
Everybody has disappeared. Dialogic consciousness. So the critical pedagogy by Freire was produced like 100 years ago, a long time ago. And so he didn't have all kinds of concerns we have now or evidence, for example, about learning and so on. But Freire was interested in um, using literacy to empower children who were like from underdeveloped or
Mice is back.
underprivileged strata of the society. Maisa, continue, please. So you were interested in Freire and his critical pedagogy, and
Yes. And then I found a word which is very powerful that we should, when we are going to empower teachers or preserve teachers or the teachers candidate, we need to have a dialogic consciousness where actually it puts in the condition where I can put me as a teachers, as a lecturers, and my students to read the word and the word, the words and the word. It's a very powerful statement, I think. Then starting from that kind of, also I read several journals about what actually is the empowerment model for the English teachers. That I decided to have 5 dimensions, Anya. The first dimension is about knowledge dimensions. So
Mhm.
if we are going to empower our students to become a good English speaker, of course, we have to know all and anything about English itself, the subject that we are going to teach. And then the second is personal growth. So, what kind of is the personal growth here? The growth mindset that the teachers candidates should have is awareness. They have to be very aware what they teach, who they teach, and how they will deliver the English lessons. And actually, it is the combination between the 21st century learning platform. It is taken from the personal, from the sorry, the this life skills, 21st century life skill, where there are what is it, flexibility, responsibility, leadership, and others. And then the second is that we have to also empower in the terms of competence. The teacher should be able to know what is it, not only the English competencies, but also the way they deliver the materials, the English materials. And the fourth is about we have to what is it? Learning commitments. We have
I think I think Mesa has internet connection problem.
interesting because you're both in the same city.
Um, Not really. I live quite far from Cirebon actually.
I just had her for a second and she's disappeared again. So the framework, the educational framework that Maisa is now outlining, I think it is critical. It doesn't matter how you, me, or her interpret this. What
oh
what's
sorry.
what's important, Maisa?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a bit of
Um.
noise. Do you know what it is? Anyway, so I want our audience to appreciate why you are outlining the framework which informs your teaching. I think this is it. So okay, so it is extremely important because when I read articles from Southeast Asia, sometimes these um, concepts from our curricula are or higher or what is it called, new standards, higher education standards, right? So sometimes all these concepts are sometimes are present, but they are not elaborated, but very often they are not present, and consequently what happens, the article goes on a tangent which the author might have read somewhere in, say, Noonan or some other text. And they explore anxiety, explore vocabulary, but none of that is related to the job as outlined by the policies. So consequently, the article is highly idiosyncratic. Well, most of our articles actually are, but it doesn't have consequential impact for language teachers, because and for teachers in future, because um, we as teacher educators, we need to model, and we need to model not just the way we teach but also the way we rationalize what we do. So if our research and our modeling lacks framing, so basically it's a free for all. You can do whatever you want, and consequently real progress doesn't happen because we lack principles which we could share, and in relation to which we could construct our discussions and our learning. So it is, I'm absolutely um, pleased, Maisa, to hear from you the framing that informs your teaching and your goals. Extremely important. So continue, please. We understand that but that you drop off now and then. It's fine.
Thank you. So then, based on that kind of my research, my recent research, I tried to make my students. I mean, I was handling for a critical thinking and English debate classroom last semester, and I'm thinking hardly how to put that five dimensions in my class. So
Yeah.
have to. So that's what you see in my Facebook page. That I usually appreciate what actually they have, although a very little improvement. I said that this kind of awareness that I have to put to them, then actually it's okay. We are learning. We are learner. You have to do that kind of mistake. It's okay, but later on you still need an etc. It's a kind of motivation how to keep their was struggling in their confidence when they're speaking English, and then their confidence in their in materials that they have prepared anything. Then I also try to put the critical thinking competence, which is very what is important, I think, because we are teaching English. We have to what is it to lead them how to be critical thinking. I usually give motion. In a debate there is a motion, but before coming to the motion, I also what is it lead them how to make micro questions, such as starting for what is every word means in that motion, and then what expert define the words in the motions, and what are the current issues in that motion, and what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages, and etc. I had written all in my book. Then I asked them to do that step by step. It takes around 2 months having that kind of theory of what is it of practicing critical thinking, and also the rules of debates. Then the two
So just
months
wait,
last.
my side. So I would just want to summarize it because I have seen your films, but I think many people didn't. People who will listen, will have a
Mhm.
thousand people eventually listening to this. So 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 you're working as a teacher educator,
Exactly.
but at the same time you also teach English.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so right. So the debates, because I saw that you use the framework of debates uh, to support your students, your pre-service teachers, in
Mm-hmm.
learning English. So your students were engaging in debates. They did a lot of work to prepare for the debate, and then you filmed the debate. And because everybody was happy and they enjoyed the context, you
Yeah.
put it on Facebook. So what you're saying is, I'm just asking you, through your teaching, through debates, are you modeling not just how to teach, but how to think about teaching?
Yes, that's right. I'm showing my students as a teacher candidate that we are going to have this kind of competence. Leading our students to think critically is the point that we have to be taken a part of that kind of competence, which is actually it is something that nobody asks us how to what is it make a create question, a powerful questions that lead our students to think critically. Because when it is all about English materials, it is all done in 1 week or etc. 16 sentences and etc. But that's not the point. Why we should use English? Why English is important for your life? Should we have to what is it? We have to teach our students that you are going to be an English teacher, and actually it is what is it, you have a really important roles of how to make your students become very successful person in the next future when they can activate their critical thinking competence. So that's actually I'm going to show my students, and yeah.
Right. So what happened? So your colleagues are enthusiastic, because we're talking still about your context of work. Are your colleagues enthusiastic about when they hear about your approach and how seriously you take the curriculum, the ELT curriculum on board, and how you want to um, appropriate it in your teaching? Are your colleagues with you on it?
Yes, actually, there these lectures also is the result of our discussion. What actually that should an English teachers have? What kind of competence that is what is it fixed or that is needed in the 21st century learning? Why we are an English teacher, we have to take an important role. So what kind beside an English beside a linguist actually or beside a language competence, we have to put another skill. Then here we are. We have an English. What is it? English debate, a critical thinking and English debate is a result of our discussion. That this is another. It's like the combinations between 21st century skills and also the English, Ania.
Oh, sure.
There are
Absolutely, yeah, because you don't want people just to talk. You want
yeah.
people to actually grow as a result of their talk. So, can you tell us a little bit before I engage my colleagues, my home team? Could you tell us how you conduct that? How you prepare your students for those debates? How the practicalities of your project-based learning with your students. It's we know it's not easy. We have had experience with project-based learning, and it's fun, but you have to prepare.
Yeah, well, actually, first, of course, syllabus. I have to, what is it, prepare more than 16 motion for my 3 classes. 16 motions means I have to think 16 problems. That is very hard, and also the things that perhaps they can get involved in that kind of motions. To encourage and to make them more what is it a spirit to have a debate. But then I also
What do
prepared
you mean?
and I'm
Pardon me, pardon me. What do you mean by those 16 emotions? What exactly? Can you
motion means
elaborate a little bit?
emotion mean problems, Ania. The problems that we have to give to the students, and they have to be opposition theme when they have also and also affirmative themes. Affirmative theme means that they agree with the problems, the issues that I made, and the opposition theme, which consists of 3 persons, must be the opposition. They have to think hardly. They have to argue that motion. Think, then stand their argument in the opposition thing. But actually, I'm showing them that life is never flat. Sometimes we have the pro and also the cons. Then that's actually they trigger how to build, how to search a mini research about the reasons why I have to be stand when I was in opposition and also in affirmative. But before having that kind of debate, of course, I come with the general definition of critical thinking and how to make them and lead them to be familiarized in doing that kind of critical thinking practice with a small thing come from the WH question: what, how, why, and then in what way, or when, where. That's the kind of we are teaching, right? I also used to teach in English course, and I know that WH question is the part of what is it, the initiation of the doing a research, right? And I'm teaching them how to keep asking like that. Then coming that, I divided the groups, the students into one class consists of around six groups. One group consists of six persons. 6% is divided into two groups, the opposition team and the affirmative teams. And every group practices 5 times in a debate, in the real debate. Uh, Practice, not competition yet, but also five problems, five issues, and then they exchange. They come. Sometimes they are in a position. Sometimes also they are in affirmative. So by doing that, actually, I'm sure that my students will what is it? Will practice think critically using also in English. I also teach them how when you are going to argue something, it's better to use this, and also and when you are going to uh, giving or deliver questions for your partners for your was it oppositions, you'd better to have this. I'm giving a model, Ania. Of course, I'm giving a model. I'm also sometimes I put some references from Obama when he was having a great debate. And I don't know, in 2004, perhaps, yeah, I put the Obama's debate as a model. I try to pause, look at the way he answers, look at the way he started and I try to cut and then here's the way and tell them
Right.
that this.
He was a great speaker, so it's very nice to actually use some authentic materials to learn from other people how they talk. That's exactly how we learn a language, from examples.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
But
Lala,
Ania, actually there are many problems behind the scene of fear. Yeah? There are many problems behind the scene. Not only that students are struggling to what is it to fight their confidence, etc. I also struggling how to be very patient in having students who do not have any improvement in week by week. So that's actually I have to find another word how to motivate them, how to encourage them to, oh come on, you can do that. But then the same result, the same performance, but it's okay. I said it's okay. Maybe someday after you are being a teacher, you will know that this actually the part that you have to remember. Someone can be what is it? Not good in English, yeah, and also later when you need it, so it will be better than English.
Maisa, what do you mean that your students don't make improvement? It's very hard to improve from week to week, so that's for sure. But
Yeah,
but what do you mean? What do you mean by improvement? That some of them, like you have. I understand all about
okay,
patience. I am the least patient person.
okay.
Uh, Andrew's role in my life has always been be patient. He's just just that motto runs his life. I'm not patient. Um,
Yeah.
but but what do you mean that what do you expect to see when you talk about improvement?
yeah, when because it is speaking performance, so of course I have a rubric, scoring rubric, Anya. This is the accuracy, the what is it, yeah, fluency, accuracy, competency, and also I have a rubric of how to assess the critical thinking. So how what is the reasons, the rubric of I mean, yeah, the the scoring rubric of critical thinking. I also have that kind of thing. So when I say that, yeah, when I say that my students did not have any improvement, means that actually they just still use the same language. What is it? Utterance. I mean, several or some utterances, and they also have a very standard critical points, such as come from only the definitions, and then they sometimes forget about how to take some expert quotation. They don't do that while the others do. Then yeah, I have some rubric, of course, Ania. So why I said that some students do not have any improvement, because uh, I did not find any progress week by week.
Sure. Okay, I'll just let my colleagues talk to you, and then I will probably come up with more summarizing questions. My
Okay. Hello.
Now Anya is having an internet connection, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
Yes.
just curious about the your project. I mean, did you develop your own rubric, or was it someone else's rubric, Bumaisa, that you use in the context of your research?
Yes, of course, it's combinations, and it is my a combination between, the 21st century skills
Hmm.
provide critical thinking, scoring critical thinking indicators, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I use that kind of indicators to to assess my students' critical thinking competence,
Right.
and also.
So
Mhm.
you were the one that um, used the rubric. I mean, you were the one who assessed the learning performance of the students in the debating project.
For now, yes, it is only me, but I'm thinking of having another, what is it, option, Mr. Lala,
Hmm.
perhaps my
Right. Right.
colleague, to,
Yeah.
what is it, have to, yeah, have to invite them perhaps to share the
Yeah.
rubrics and to
Yeah.
get some any, what is it, feedback or point of view of, which will you be my, my
With
partner?
pleasure. In the context of my research, I hired three international academic writers to become the reviewers of my students' academic papers. So
Oh.
I was using double-blind procedures for
Mm-hmm.
the assessment of the pre-test and post-test. So I was
Yeah.
not involved at all in the assessment process. That's number one. And number
Mm-hmm.
two, the three international academic raters, we call them raters in my thesis,
Mm-hmm.
have very rich background in dealing with academic reviews of the journals here in
Mm-hmm.
Indonesia and beyond. And number three, my students and my raters do not know each other. So
Ah,
so all the
really
papers
valuable.
are
Mm-hmm.
are are anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
There are no vested interest in how we
Mm-hmm.
actually assess that. Since I was also a former debating coach for my university students, I mean, before joining Shahrujati, I was
Mm-hmm.
also a key coaching leader for the project. And in 2014, I took my debating team to participate in Southeast Asian Debating Open uh,
Wow.
in Sarawak, Kuching. The event was held at Curtin University, Sarawak, in Miri. So we had to fly from Jakarta to Kuala Lumpur and from KL to Miri. And it was a very marvelous experience, Bu Maisa. We had a tremendous journey, and one of the best things that I learned as a debating coach is that I learned the art of self-questioning. I think both of us love the British parliamentary system, right? We have lots of motions, and then in every single motions, I always encourage my students to jot down every different question. So we were brainstorming those ideas through questioning, and I think it resonated well with my research experience in my PhD because uh, I and my supervisors, Professor Underline and Anya, we're using three different learning tools in my academic learning pedagogy, where every single student had to create self-directed questions. So I think when it comes to project-based learning, the art of teaching and learning must stem from self-questioning, right?
Yes,
So
right.
in your case, could you tell us a little bit about how you developed the art of questioning? Because at Google, at Apple, or Microsoft, the art of questioning is highly valued, right? So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's right. Having self-directed questions, it's the point of how to be a critical thinking, right, Mr. Lala. And well, when I have to admit that my students is still having what is it? What I said, what I called excluded
Mm-hmm.
critical thinkers, because that's actually only the beginning. I still guide. I still lead them how to what is it? To give the guided questions, and this is the way how to start it, to make that kind of questions by
Yeah.
giving them a problems, and they come to every detail, every single words in that problems or the motions. Then having self-directed learning
Mm,
means that when they can come and they can collect more arguments to stand
mm,
with that motion as what their roles in the debates. So I hope
yeah.
by doing that kind of practice, uh, I hope I hope someday they can do that in their classroom.
Mm,
They can also have be come what is it, self-directed learners or self-directed teacher learners, right? The teachers must
Yeah.
be long life
yeah.
learners, right? Then this is the key point of I mean the key of my lecture. So but talking about another terms like collaborative examination, I remember that I also have a partner from Malaysia, but it was not in the same course, but it is in the daily introduction of what is it? Speaking for daily communications. Yeah, I asked my colleague from Malaysia, Miss Alin, to assess my students
Yep.
because it is speaking. So I and Miss Alin agree that actually our role is uh, what is it? Is giving or is I mean because English still their foreign language, so we have to be encourage. I mean we have to encourage our students better. So although we know that they are still remembering, perhaps because it is having a role play, they are still
Mm,
remembering the dialogue, but then we have to be. I mean, still we have to encourage them that speaking uh, skill is a skill. Then it
mm,
needs a practice. The practice will make you improvements day by day. The more you practice, the better the improvement. So that's what actually I and Miss Alim agree for giving more encourage to our students in assessing speaking
yeah.
performance. That's
Mm,
actually.
right. That one more question. Our classroom is very complex, right? I think,
Mhm.
from my experience, those good debaters have
Mhm.
very good English proficiency. I think in the context of CFR now that we have in MBKM, the good debaters can be taken from the group of B1 level above. But
Yeah.
those in A1 and A2, I don't think that we could force them to join the debating sessions because they are, I mean, most of them are struggling readers, right? And then
Right.
they don't have enough spoken proficiency, etc. And how did you cope with that complexities? Because
Yeah.
debating is very complex, right? We need to develop intensive practices, 8 hours a
Exactly.
day in a single week, in a month. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, so because I have two competence that I assess, which is their English and also their critical thinking competence. So I sometimes, Mr. Lala, I try to spread it. Sometimes I have to separate the what is it, the assessment. This is my tolerance for teaching
Mm,
them. Sometimes the ones who are having a good arguments, but also but they cannot what is it they cannot deliver their arguments. I sometimes, oh well, okay, I can get the points, and I say, oh, that's he is good at critical thinking, but they are having excluded English proficiency, but it's okay. I said to myself then, but I still encourage them. But then when I suppose, I mean, I think that there is one and there are some also that they have already more than B1 perhaps. They have a
mm,
good English proficiency, and they also have a good critical thinking practice, because every week I give a different, what is it, different problems, different issues to debate, and also I give them feedback one by one personally, Ania, Mr. Lala. I give them personally feedback
mm,
for them. I take the notes, the what is it, the indicators of critical thinking. Also, I take the notes, the language points, what slip of the tongue they made, and what kind of expression they should when they deliver the arguments. I also take a note. So every they performs, I was very busy. I was the busiest
mm,
one. I'm not the passive listener, but I remember what actually they did, the mistake,
mm.
or what they missed, and etc. So
Oh,
that's right. It is very complex, but because I have the commitment for myself also, I'm doing this, and I have also many knowledge about this. That actually this is the best thing that I can do, and I have to become commitment in my idea. Then I have to be very busy in every what is it, meetings, for
mm.
having for listening them and to see their improvement and progress. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my commitments. Okay,
Right.
Andrew, would you like to contribute?
Andrew seems too busy. Hello, Andrew.
He's
Okay,
fine.
everything's going wrong. Oh, the internet all over Asia is broken, I think,
Yeah, I think so.
and I was trying to push the button on my microphone and it wasn't working. On top of that, so Maisa, welcome. Hello, Swagati. Nice
Hi.
to see you all.
Yeah.
I do remember you. I do
Yeah.
remember you from Cirebon,
Andrew
and
is amazing. He
it's
does.
nice to see.
Okay.
Hmm?
Andrew remembers everyone's
Tanya, what
face,
did you say?
everyone's name. It's
Okay, she
extraordinary.
go. See, everybody's going and coming back. So, I,
Okay, Andrew, what question would you have?
well, I have a number of questions. First of all, a debate is not project-based learning. That's the
Problem
first thing
testing.
to say. I mean, the debate is especially in the way. Look, first of all, I did not hear everything, so I'm not quite sure. I lost the first 10 minutes
Okay,
of the
so
talk,
debate
so I have
debate
no context.
okay, so debate is an outcome of preparation. It's not a method, it's an outcome of preparation. So students prepare, practice, and then have a debate. So the concept of project entails the period spent on the process of preparation.
Sure. Uh, but it's a very specific outcome because, as far as I can tell, this is a um, a system based on the British uh, debating um, conventions, and that's why Maisa was talking about motions, and that's why Anya, you didn't understand
Yeah.
it because because in the British system, but say if you take the Oxford debates or the Cambridge debates, what happens is that the discussion is about what's called a motion. It's like in Parliament.
Yeah, I
So
get it. Yeah.
the motion is that apples are good for your health, right? And so everybody's going to vote. And the point is that everybody at the end of the debate is going to vote on which side has won. But sometimes that's not always the case.
Ah.
Sometimes there's an adjudicator who decides what
Mhm.
the outcome will be. So what this is about the context. Um, and so it's a very specific kind of project which
Mhm.
um, which enables people to be free up to a point within the constraints of the debate structure in this case. Now, so you can have very narrow projects, and then you can have very wide projects. And the project, in Sugata Mitra's terms, is a self-organizing learning environment. In my terms, also, it's very broad, or it can be very broad. But any topic that you take as a big topic has limitations, and so you have to play inside the game of that of that uh, of that objective. But basically, the issue of a debate, not of a debate, of a project, is that you set big objectives, not narrow objectives. And so within that, you then construct opportunities to do certain things. Now, we have two conflicting views in education, if you like. One view is that we have a great deal of freedom, and so we are free to move around in any way we like. But at the same time, we also have limitations which are set by local and national syllabuses and curriculum structures. And so the difficulty that we are faced with when we talk about project or any of these self-organizing structures is actually the relationship between the self-organizing structure and the requirements of the administration. And in some sense, they are conflictual. They cannot get along with each other. You can either have the control or you can have the freedom. And what we have in most cases nowadays, where we are moving towards self-regulation, and we are moving towards uh, wider areas, because we are realizing that a syllabus which is prescriptive is not going to be met. Right? If you're going to learn, as I keep saying in this podcast and elsewhere, if you're going to learn 10 words today and 10 words tomorrow and 10 words afterwards, at the end of the week, you will not know 30 words. You will probably know two more words or five, because
Mhm.
the syllabus says we will do the lesson plan says we will learn this and we will learn that and we will learn that. That's not the reality of learning.
And there are neurological reasons for it, right? we are
Sure.
not we are not constructed to remember lists. And I think we
Well,
had
it's
a
not
little
just,
session
but
here
yeah, but it's not just lists that we're talking about. It's construction. It's using it's other forms of memory generation. Whether we use things or whether we use them with heart or whether we use them with motivation, whether we use them with emotion. All of these things are part of the memory organization of people, and people are not going to remember what we want them to remember. They will remember what they want to remember, in the sense that they are motivated to remember or they are ready to remember. So what I'm trying to say is that a project and a debate in this case is a structure which provides opportunities for reuse and reuse of both terms and conventions and structures. And with time, and that's what Maisa was talking about before, you need time because she doesn't see progress from week to week. Well, you won't probably because the progress is small and the progress is not discernible, right? So what you will see, however, is maybe after 15 weeks or 20 weeks or 30 weeks or some time, some difference between the beginning and the end, if you
Yes.
can measure it.
Mhm.
And the problem with all of these things is, how do you measure it? Yes, you can have rubrics and so on, but sometimes the rubrics are not sufficient. And sometimes actually, instead of having rubrics depending on expert or highly qualified raters and listeners, is a better way of doing it, because they have access unconsciously to the standards. Now I know it's not fashionable not to talk about rubrics. I think people say, well, how do you know what you're testing? Well, you rely on things other than arbitrary requirements. And and I mean, when you submit an article for publication, sometimes there are rubrics, but quite often there are not. And in the end, people say to you, okay, you've gone through all these rubrics, and now make a decision. And in that connection between the rubrics and the making of a decision is the entire organization of what is a good article or not. So I know it sounds unscientific and I know it sounds fragile, but it is
Mhm.
real. And that's
Yes.
how we make decisions.
Yeah.
That's actually the realities of how we make. So you can have a million curriculum things
Mhm.
and a million lesson plans. They can only serve as a first step in guidance before you ultimately make the final step. So I think the debates are very, very good. I think that they are able to raise critical awareness and critical thinking and critical reasoning, and keep people sharp. Because when you're taking part in the debate, apart from the first person who makes the opening statement, and to some extent the response from the second person leading the other team, everything else is constructed as you go along. I mean, you may have some points in reserve, or you may say, oh, number two will talk about this, number three will talk about that, number four will talk about that. But in the reality of real debates, you have somebody says something, and then
Yeah.
you must respond to
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
And you have to respond
POI.
to it. Yeah, I mean, you have to respond to it in a very impromptu way. You have to
And I
respond
give
to it in
the
a way.
more, yeah, I give the best score for those who can argue with the point of view from others.
Right,
Yeah, because that is the point
right.
of critical thinking,
Right.
responding quickly to stand the
It
argue.
was so you have to respond quickly, you have to
Yeah.
respond well, you have to respond in a way that is appropriate for the debate structure. And
Yeah.
and I mean, a lot of the debate structures in the English system is that you have to be humorous, you have to make people
The
laugh,
best listener.
you have to
Good
you have to
listener.
be sarcastic. That's very
Mm-hmm.
difficult for people who are
Yeah.
learning
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
another language, and not another culture, because we can argue about what that means, another culture, but the culture of British style debates. So you're actually not training them to become good speakers in real life. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you are, but it's not. You're doing more than that. You're actually
But
training
be
them
good
to
listener
be
also.
very specific.
Good listener. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
The, the, the debate. I try to what is it, to tell my students that in a debate you are not leading them to be a good speaker, but also they have to be good listeners. So they can be good critical thinker.
Right. And so they have to be good listeners. Now, good listening is of course crucial, but also very difficult.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's you cannot simply say, "Oh, you have to be a good listener." I mean, I've said this to my students: you have to be good listeners, but that's not enough. You have to have infrastructures in your organization which
Mhm.
enable people to become good listeners. And by that I mean opportunities for listening, opportunities for understanding cultural context. You might have, and you don't have enough time in the classroom to do all of that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you need two things to learn a language. I think you need time. That's the first thing that you need, and you need access. Access to what? Well, the access to what is dynamic and depends upon what it is that you're trying to do. The what. So it's not about words and grammar. Uh,
Mhm.
Although it is also about words and grammar, but that's not enough. So it's
Mhm.
also about the entire spirit of the debate, the entire spirit of the conversation. As I said, the humor, the sharpness, the wit. And if they can do that, and probably only one or two will do that, then
Yeah.
then that's excellent. But in trying to do that, they they go along a path of developing new and unexpected skills. And I say unexpected because people are different. You cannot program people into a curriculum. You can program objectives. I want my students to be critical thinkers. Well, that is vague enough. That is vague enough to be meaningful, if you see what I mean. It's because you can be critical in a thousand different ways. You can be a
Yeah.
critical thinker in a thousand different ways. So it's not
Yeah.
about to be looking the same as everybody else. It's about distinction, distinctiveness, variety, and so on. So
Can
I
I
think
just add to
it's very interesting.
it? I think that what Andrew said, that so part of the debate is obviously to learn what's the style of a debate, say in Indonesia, and what's the style, say the British style, because it's and maybe also
Different.
American, but I think that they overlap. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you a story. Sorry, just bear with me for a minute. So part of the Anglo-Saxon, so what you teach is not only listening and speaking, but also the culture. And this is really funny because Andrew mentioned an aspect of it, which is the wit, humor. Um, in the debate between gentlemen, you're not there to kill the interlocutor, although you are.
No, no, no. You are there to
Sarcastic.
kill the interlocutor, but you have to do it in a certain stylized manner.
Right. So
Yeah. Yes.
you never slap them to the corner, right? You've got to give them room, and you also have to
No.
show that you are relaxed. And to show that you are relaxed,
Mhm.
you make a joke. And everybody laughs for two reasons, because the joke was funny, but also because everybody knows its tense. Everybody knows a debate is tense. And the fact that you were able to make a joke in such a tense context, it shows you're really cool. So, one of the things I wanted to suggest, because Andrew said, well, typically only one or two students will squeeze in a joke once taught, but you can tell them to prepare a joke, and squeeze it in when suitable.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
They can actually come
Mhm.
in with the joke in their mind. I'll tell you something what happened to me. So I don't know her full name, because in Indonesia you've got names this long, but Hanum Pertiwi. Lala knows her name. Can you tell her name, Lala? What's her name? Uh,
Her name is Widya
Yes.
Hanum Sari Pertiwi.
who can
Hello.
remember?
Okay.
Not the Andrew can remember. Anyway, so in Australia, you don't defend your final completion of your PhD. You defend the
Mhm.
proposal. So you get examined. You get examined by three examiners, but you defend orally your proposal. It takes 1 year, about 1 year, to make your proposal. So when Hanum was making her preparation, I make my students come. How often, Lala? Do you remember? Every week? Every week or so, they have
Yes,
to read.
every week. Right.
They memorize it. I make them memorize. I used to memorize things and I just can't get it out of myself. So I make my students memorize. They come to class and other PhD students are there too. They all watch it. So it's tense. And they reproduce it and they record all the feedback they get. I made Hanum to memorize a joke and say it during the defense.
For
And
defense,
it's
okay.
not, my idea was good, but the fact that that girl, woman of 5 children now, or I have 4 children, that she remembered, she gave the presentation, and in the middle of it, she threw in that joke, was so good because once she left, the examiners stayed in the room, and I was there as her supervisor. And the comment from the head of the college, Greg Shaw, was, I like her. She is funny. I like her. She even managed to say a joke in such a tense context that I'm sitting there thinking, I do it because I know the style. I know the style of these meetings. I understand the Anglo-Saxon culture, and I wanted her to have the
Enjoy.
examiner. I wanted her to have the examiners on her side.
Okay.
So if you come in nicely dressed, you speak well, you are nice to people, and if you throw in a joke, people like you. They will not
Yeah,
fail
that's
you
right.
because they like
That's
you.
right. And you are a good supervisor, Ania. You know best your students.
Yeah, Anya is best.
So that's what I suggest. That's why I suggested that your students can actually prepare. They can look on the internet and check jokes, check anecdotes. Anecdotes are funny because you can also use them as an argument. They can look for anecdotes that suit their subject. Also, you can go to ChatGPT and do two
Yeah.
things. First, ask it to tell you a joke in English. ask it to
Oh, they
make
can they
ask
can
it to
provide
make
them.
So, for example, if you talk about apples being good for you, ask it
Uh-huh.
to make up a joke about apples. So it will do it. It will, So there are anecdotes online. I know because I work in literacy, but you can also ask. I was talking to my mother in Polish, and I didn't know what to say. Had nothing to say, so I typed to ChatGPT, can you tell me a Polish joke? And it, came up with a Polish joke, and I read it out to my mother. It was funny. Another thing I wanted to suggest, maybe for you, because you said that students need to create questions. So, it's really hard to advise. But you know how I would do it today? I would go to ChatGPT and say to ChatGPT, I'm talking about apples being bad for you, because I have to speak against the motion. So apples are bad for you. So, ChatGPT, this is my motion. I want to defend that apples are bad for you. Can you come up with 10 things I need to research to make that case? Or 10 questions? ChatGPT is patient. It will come up with any questions they need to explore. So, it didn't come out in your discussion about chat. You probably will be easing into it, but I strongly, strongly support it because what you have students learning by reading, talking to each other through your feedback, but then they have to speak. So they have to integrate all these resources and all these texts they have explored and in a live situation, which is great. So, yeah, another thing. You record your debates, right? And I want
No,
to, I want to
I don't
marry what
know.
Andrew was saying and what you were saying. So, if you record your debates, you can actually have them live, but not to the world, because you want your students to feel safe. Obviously,
Mm,
I live in Australia. I would send my students live on the internet, right? But that's okay. But you're in Indonesia, you may not feel the same freedom yet. So you could have a private link. It's unlisted, unlisted podcast. So on YouTube, you have private, unlisted, and public. If it's
okay.
unlisted, if it's unlisted, everybody with the link can watch it.
Yeah.
Get create You can create a community with your colleagues so that
Mm-hmm.
other people who are studying English to be teachers. Oh, I removed Andrew. Um, so you can create a community so that other students can watch it, not necessarily of English, but students of English as well, but not necessarily, and they will get that feedback which Andrew was saying, not necessarily feedback from syllabus, the criteria for assessing student, but live. Oh, you were funny or something. They can type, so I don't know the constraints of your context, but that's what happened here in this project. Can you see it?
No.
So this is
Okay.
what happened here. Yeah, I spoke about it in my keynote. It is on my Facebook, provided you fast
Mm-hmm.
forward to minute 18, because that's how long it took for me to talk. So here the students created Thai news network, students in Konkan, and they had a functionality that the Konkan community could
Mm-hmm.
uh, write feedback on the articles which they published on the site, or on the ideas that they could actually pick up on and create their new stories. So what I'm talking about is using imagination to expand the public that is actually viewing uh, the debate, or engaging in the debate. I mean, it would increase pressure, absolutely. But if you can have a few, say, 4 weeks committed to students preparing for it in groups also, and they have fun, it relaxes your class. But that's good because the pressure is higher. So that's some ideas. Um, Maisa, I would like to ask you some questions, okay? Just before we finish. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, did your students in your, so I'm using some criteria from my students' research, and I'm just going to ask you just shortly, just if you can answer shortly. Do your students feel like these students in this project-based learning, do they feel that they have some freedom in searching for information, exploring what they know, looking elsewhere? Do they have that freedom? Do they feel that they generate their own content?
Well, as what Andrew said, that actually this freedom with the limitation, or freedom with the
Yes,
responsibility. I mean,
yes,
yeah, I mean, I give them a freedom when they have to choose what patient. It is not in the English debate classrooms, but another lectures, another course. I also teach, uh, you know, instructional design, or also human literacy, and I let them choose what they want to have in their project. Do they want to create a short story, or do they want to create a video telling about how this persons grow in the context of human literacy? So a freedom, but with some limitation, and also responsibility they have to what is it? They have to be responsible in their idea, in their choice. When they choose that, so they have to be commitment to finish it by having personal coach during the course till the project has finished. I think the
Yeah.
freedom and the limitation and responsible.
Um, Uh, you probably don't may not know here because this was obviously the those comments from those students were taken after the project.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can comment, by all means, please. Do you think your students grow? Do you like these students here in Konkan notice change in themselves as a result of the project that they undertook? So I read more. My parents notice I have changed. What do you think? Can you comment, or you just don't know?
Uh, well, uh, yeah, I think it's a kind of what is it? A guidance from us as a teachers or parent to let them change, but change the changes that they are going to change is their choice. Then they have to be responsible in the changes and the choice. I think.
Okay. So you probably don't do that, but here students were commenting on the fact that because they had to, like in your case, make a case for something, right? So these people, in order to make a case, so they had
Mm-hmm.
to look for information somewhere. So it wasn't just there was no textbook for it. So they had to look for information in the community, in library, and so on, NGOs. So they learned how big was their community, and how many people actually had information, and not only that, how many people actually liked the idea that they came by and asked for information. So they were learning what is out there, outside of their homes and outside of their classroom walls. So that was, can you comment in your case on that or not yet?
Well, sometimes the information is not coming from the teachers or the person or even the they can't find the information from anyone. I mean, anything. But then, yeah, we still have to tell them the objective. I mean, what project that they are going to create, and then what things they need, what information they need to search, and who are the sources or who are the ones who can ask for. I think we can lead them to do the project based on what they need in the projects, perhaps.
Yes, so there is this interaction between teacher and the students so that they don't just go wild
Yeah.
and give up. But this project was done in 2001, so Google wasn't there, I think. So now it's more information. Maybe
And yeah,
Google.
I always have personal coach. When I give my students project, I still invite them in a meeting to have personal coach. It's
Sure. It's
one
very
week. It's 1 week. So I need to see what the progress they have. For example, okay, the first week, what are you going to create? Oh, ma'am, I'm going to have this and this and this. Okay, and the next week I try to see their result, and then they have many information they provide me, and they also serve me many choices. And I said, well, do you think, are you sure with this choice, what do you think about this, and etc. And this discussion, this is kind of personal coach. And after that I decide, and they can come to the next. So after you have deal with that kind of choice, then what are you going to do? I'll lead them. Okay, so now please have this, and that. And every week, I do meeting. I do watch them meeting by meeting, week by week, to make sure that they do the project and they are in
Well, you
in
have
in
to
the
manage
reality.
too. I mean, if you teach and you've got this many weeks, someone has
Mhm.
to oversee it so that to make sure that students just don't forget until the
Yeah,
week, just
yeah,
before assessment. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah,
certainly.
personal coach. I call it personal coach, like just like coaching, personal coach. But it is based on their idea, but it is based on their information they got. So that's personal coach. What I call it, personal coach.
So our students in this project, they had a shared place from which they were projecting, where they were displaying the news items and so on. So that's we were talking about. I think it's a great
Yeah.
thing for other people to build the university community or course program community. I think it always helps other people learn, and what happens, you spread the culture of a debate. So next time you have new students or whatever, it's people just find it easier. It's just like, oh yeah, this is the thing we do. It's not like, oh my god, we've got to debate. It's just something we do.
No,
So
no.
that helps actually spread the culture.
Yeah.
Agency. So you notice a change. Are your students sort of enjoying or being in charge in some way, that they notice that they have more freedom? They don't just have to wait until they are told what to do. Sometimes they actually
Mhm.
have control.
Mhm. Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Of course. Of course, actually, it is the debate practices takes 2 weeks, once for 2 weeks. So, a week for preparation to search or to do the mini research about the problems or about the motions. And yeah, because just I understand that it is the debate Indonesian debate section, or perhaps for this debate section where it is in the English classroom. So it is not the real British debate or the Australian debate or American debate, but it is the Indonesian version, the English what is it debate classroom. So that's I give them a week to do a mini research about anything information they can have for the arguments, and they also can make a note what kind of arguments they are going to what is it deliver to the motion. Then the 2 weeks and next week they practice the debate, and they have to be ready for the question for any question that the opposition uh, ask to them. Of course, I need them first to learn, or I mean to think and to collect some information
Do
to
your
see or to
students
do
work?
the progress.
Do your students work in groups ever?
Yes. Uh, there are two. What is it? In the group.
We
In
can't
the
hear you well. We can't hear
team.
you. Maisa, can you talk a little bit more to the microphone? I can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you
Maybe.
speak closer?
What about now? Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Have
So
to. Mhm. Can you continue first? Because I need to check my. I need to turn off my alarm. Wait a minute.
so it's on and off, on and off. Um so
Okay.
do you have, just speak slower so we can hear you better. Um do you have group work sometimes in your, when students prepare for the debate, do they prepare sometimes in groups?
Yes. Yes. They work in the group. For the preparation, they work in a group, they share their job. The first speaker must have this kind of arguments, this kind of, the contents of the task of the first speaker is divining and one arguments, and then the second speaker has the different role with the first, third also, the third speaker also has a different role for the speaker. So they do collaborations in this. What is it? I also assess how they collaborate and how they can do their own jobs as what their role in the teams. So they do collaborations, Ania.
Correct. So I don't want to. I just wanted to find something else in this PowerPoint I prepared, but it seems like not possible. Um, so I wanted to thank you. I will just let other my colleagues just say the last word if they have anything. I just wanted to say, Maisa, it is extremely difficult to change culture. The curriculum came in, So we have both the school curriculum, and then we have higher education standards. They are culture changing policies, and it's very hard to make a change, especially in the country where education used to be a little bit more transmission based. But in Australia, it's the same. We also have the same issues, right? It's very hard to make a switch and to understand how to
Yeah.
balance what you said, what you and Andrew were saying, that the freedom and the limitation, the freedom and the limitation. So I wanted people. I wanted to look for the English curriculum, but I don't know where the slide is. But in any case, I just wanted through our discussion to show that straddling those two extremes is possible and is
Oh,
done in Indonesia, and
yeah.
your
Yeah.
students are not dead.
Mm.
You seem to be smiling. Your students are smiling because I saw them smile on video. So things are possible. We do not have to go back to grandma and do how things were done 70 years ago. We actually can move forward with your smiling face and actually work with the curriculum, work with higher order thinking skills, and teach English in the process. Because when we learn English, we don't learn to blah, blah, blah. We learn to speak like an educated, thinking person. That's why critical thinking. You don't want to open your mouth and say the cat is on the mat. And was that yesterday too? Right? So debate is great because it forces critical thinking, it forces thinking, it creates a culture of thinking. So I wanted to say ELT curriculum is challenging, but you are alive, students are making it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is our challenge. Yeah, Mr. Lala, the freedoms or the emancipated curriculum is our challenging. Where so that's I myself as the teachers, I mean the teachers of the teachers candidate, just try to keep thinking positively. What should actually we have the freedom, right, to create syllabus, to what is it, to listen what actually our students patience on the learning. So that's actually the positive thing of the emancipated curriculum nowadays. I try to keep that kind of Mr. Lala. I don't know Mr. Lala, but it's hard. It's hard to what is it, to you're talking about the changes in the curriculums. It's really not what is it, small to do, right? It's a big job.
No, no, it's a challenge. It's a challenge in your own thinking as a teacher.
Yeah.
There's a challenge also of letting go. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
just co-written a paper with Indonesian colleagues, and the
Mm-hmm.
pre-service teachers were saying, "What if I don't have enough English? English, you are not the source of English.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is. Texts are. There are texts on online. You can read. There are books you can read. There is English. It's not the teacher." Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
I can see your face. You're smiling. You're happy. Would you like to make final comments? Because we're way over the time limit now. We have to go.
No, no, I think we over. I agree with you, Anya. I think that we overrate the the proficiency levels of English teachers, or the need for very high proficiency. What we Well, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to have. I mean, it is obviously a good thing to be very proficient in English, but at the same time, the understanding that you have to be a very good speaker of English uh, leads to other issues which are negative, like the belief that you need to have lots of native speakers who speak in classrooms, but who are not particularly well qualified to do that. I mean, Asia is filled with people who have traveled to Asia because they like Asia for some reason, for whatever the reason is, but cannot do any job apart from being an English teacher. And the reason that they become English teachers is because they are proficient in English, and because there is a demand for people who are proficient in English.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the requirement to be a perfectly native speaker, like whatever that means, because it doesn't mean the same thing. It doesn't mean that you are an educated native speaker, for example. A lot of
Just
people
native speaker.
are just native speakers, and as we know, there are many different kinds of native speakers with different kinds of cultural and educational levels,
Mm-hmm.
and also, of course, with many different accents. And we we say we will respect everybody, but actually we don't. uh, if somebody came with a very Scottish accent, you wouldn't want them to be the teacher of your students unless if they become like the teacher of Scottish English. I'm not saying I have nothing against Scottish English, and I have nothing against accents. uh, when I was traveling in Britain once, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it's worth it. I was traveling to cross the channel from London to Paris, and I was traveling in my car, and I stopped at the service station in a town called Rochester in Kent, and I said to the guy in my fairly standard Australian British educated English, I said, do I have to paint my headlights yellow when I go to France? Right? Because in France, everybody has yellow headlights. And the
It
guy
seems like
looked
the
at me.
global English. Is
Sorry?
that a kind of concept of global English?
Yeah, but global English is a different story. But so
Mm.
so I said, do I have to paint my headlights yellow? And he said to me, well, it's all like courtesy. Did you understand that, anybody? No. And that's how they all speak in Rochester. They all go,
A lot of
That's
stops,
the
yeah.
that's a native speaker of English. Native speakers of English do
So,
not understand each other necessarily. They can. And then you have to wonder what kind of native speaking English do you want to teach? The purpose of language, as Anya reminded me the other day, is a bit like a muscle. It's in order for you to achieve something. But I see it a little bit differently. I see it as a form of empowerment. It gives you power to do things, right? And if you
Empowerment, yes.
if you teach people if you teach people things that are not going to empower them, or if you accept levels of English which, despite global English and despite ELF and despite translingualism and all of those things, uh, actually disempower you instead of empowering, then you are doing people a disservice. You are not helping people to
Mm.
become powerful. I keep telling the story, and I've got a video of him doing this. David Crystal, who is a famous speaker, linguist of English, says that it doesn't matter if you have an accent. He has an accent when he goes to Spain because he is proud to be British, and he wants to be me. He has an identity crisis. Everybody's into identity at the moment, as you know. Everybody's into identity. He wants to be. He says, I want to be me. My question is, which me does he want to be?
Mm. Okay.
Does he want to be the professor who is respected as a professor of English and who speaks sophisticated language? Or does he want to be the guy who's a tourist and people laugh at in Spain? because the Spanish don't like people who sound funny. I don't mean this as a general rule, but in general, if you sound funny, people tend to laugh at you.
Yeah, and
So
not negatively, but I just wanted to make a point, Andrew, that I think because we have to close it shortly, so I'll let you finish. Just wanted to say that English doesn't live in the teacher, and I think that all the things that Maisa is talking about and the curriculum is talking about, all of this is about interaction and sending students to resources so that they can read up, they can learn jokes, they can learn from ChatGPT, there's a lot of English happening out there, and the teacher is not like the only source of language. And therefore my point was, we don't have to think that we cannot use project-based learning because our proficiency is not sufficient. There are resources out there, like you were using Obama. I'm not sure whether I could produce. I mean, no, I know I couldn't talk like Obama, right? You probably couldn't talk like Obama, and I don't know about Andrew. So there are resources out there where English is. We don't have to put so much pressure on ourselves that I can't do project-based learning because I can't speak like Obama. No, but you students can watch Obama, and we can talk about how Obama talks. We can
nobody
analyze.
could nobody can speak like anybody. Actually, we keep
Which was
thinking,
my
oh,
point with you last
we don't want you to sound like a native speaker. Well, you know what? You won't. Even if I train you to speak like Prince William in Britain, you will not sound like him unless you become very good at mimicking. But most people won't. Everybody has their own accent. I don't know what you think of my accent. Some people think it's British. If I go live in America, they think it's British. If I live in Australia, they think it's kind of a bit American. They're not sure. If I live in, if I, we all have our own. In the end, we do not sound specifically like the people who teach us. However, if I was being taught by a Scot, maybe I would. Anyway, the point I wanted to make is, in the end, this idea that we were going to have a whole bunch of Vietnamese sounding like Prince Charles or King Charles, whatever his name is now, is just wrong. It's not going to happen, guys. You will sound like you sound, Anya will sound like she sounds, and I will sound like I sound, because we are a mixture of many, many different things. So people shouldn't be afraid of things like accent and believing that diversity will not happen because we are all trained to sound the same. We are not. We get the same signals, but what we do with the signals is entirely personal. And it's not just
All right,
about sounds. It's not just about sounds, but it's also about everything, every other aspect of communication. Because everything depends on how you make meaning, and how you make meaning is always personal.
so
Or
making
perhaps
learning personal.
can
Debates.
I take a conclusion, Ania, from
Yes.
Andrew as a point of view? Teaching English means empowering yourself by empowering others, empowering your students. Teaching English means
Sure.
empowering yourself by empowering others. Can we come to that?
Well, that's one way of
Yes,
that's
that's
one
that interaction.
of
That's
of course, of course, of course. And in the end, there's always a power connection and a power relationship in the sorts of things that we do. And yes, we
Yeah.
do empower ourselves because we do not remain unchanged.
Yeah.
We are
okay.
we
So
are
next
constantly
week we will
changing.
have a follow-up from this discussion, but now based, sorry, Maisa, please come here as a person, as audience, because what we will do now is to speak fast and about our own research and about our own views on the subject of the debate and of the subject of problem-based learning. What we want to do in this podcast is to have a guest, hear from the guest, and then see how we would privately, we just, as a follow-up, we have a discussion between ourselves. So that will be in 2 weeks. And it's a follow-up of our discussions with guests. and we want to see how we solve problems which were raised by you and in this podcast. So it's basically learning from this experience. All right, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dr. Maisa. Thank you very much, Lala and Andrew, for coming here and for keeping these podcasts alive. We just want them to be a place or a little bit of a hub for our profession to meet and see who does what and what is happening. Otherwise, we're just stuck in our little classes and nobody knows about us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dr. Maisa. Thank you for your
Bye.
experiences sharing with us.
Thank you. You're welcome.